did many of the zoot suiters themselves. Women's fashions, too, were affected by the shortage of materials. Frills went away, and skirts got shorter, and nobody seemed to mind. And a hit song of 1942 asked the obvious musical question.
Who wouldn't love you? Who wouldn't care? You're so enchanting, people must stare. You're the dream that dreamers want to dream about. You're the breath of spring that lovers gad about or mad about. Who wouldn't love you? Who wouldn't buy the west side of heaven if you just winked your eye? You're the answer to my every prayer, darling. Who wouldn't love you? Who wouldn't care?
When folks weren't bar crawling in 1942, it seemed that everyone was going to the movies. Even more than during the Great Depression, when movies were the great escape. Each and every week, an average of 85 million people went to a motion picture. That's 60% of the total population. It wasn't easy for Hollywood to keep up with the staggering demand. Because of their importance to morale, both at home and overseas, the movies were considered to be an essential war industry, meaning that draft deferments were available to certain workers. But most of them joined anyway. Clark Gable entered the Air Corps just 6 months after his wife Carol Lombard was killed in that plane crash. Tyrone Power enlisted as a private in the Marines while the battle was going on at Guadalcanal. Jimmy Stewart was in the Air Corps flight school on the way toward winning his wings, and years later Stewart would retire as a general. And not all the movie people who enlisted were stars. In 1942 alone, a total of 4,000 workers in the motion picture industry joined the armed forces. Almost every big-name entertainer who didn't join the service spent months every year performing at home and overseas for the servicemen. As a morale builder, the visits from the stars were considered to be almost as important as tanks or planes to the war effort. Despite the loss of talent on both sides of the camera, Hollywood kept cranking out its films. And perhaps one of the reasons that attendance was so high was that some of the pictures were true classics. Casablanca, with Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, was perhaps the most enduring film of the decade. Bob Hope and Bing Crosby did what was probably the best of their road pictures in 1942, The Road to Morocco. Joseph Cotton and Anne Baxter starred in Orson Welles' film The Magnificent Ambersons. Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby sang the songs of Irving Berlin in Holiday Inn, and Crosby's recording of White Christmas remains the largest-selling single record ever released. Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake starred in the gangster classic This Gun for Hire, and the list goes on. And for the GIs overseas, the occasional opportunity to lose yourself in one of those films became as important as dry boots or a letter from home. Those letters, incidentally, came in the form of something called V-mail. That's V as in victory. V-mail. That refers to letters that were censored and then photographed and reduced in size so that more could be sent in less space. And just sorting the millions of letters that went to troops overseas every day became a major task for the armed forces, and V-mail letters like this made the job a lot easier. Just one of the small wonders of 1942. It was a year in which America was in